Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to a new episode of Micadelic. I'm your host, of course, Mike Brancatelli. Got a good episode today. When I first booked this guest, I didn't know that there was going to be a mass shooting. Wish I did know. I could have prevented it. That would be a good superpower. But I didn't know that was going to happen. Of course, no one knows these things are going to happen, but they happen. So we started, we talked about it a little bit, in like the middle of the episode. But this is a great guest. It's Marc Clair, host of the Lions of Liberty podcast. I've been on his podcast a couple times, and Marc's got a great podcast. And so I wanted to talk to him about how he started it and what brought him to the Liberty movement. And then I kind of wanted to talk to him about the war on drugs, but we didn't get to that because we talked about this mass shooting. But we had a good episode, and then there's some special bonus feature of some cool stuff that we get into, some weird and wacky and wild stuff. And that's on my Patreon. So if you're a Patreon supporter, you get access to that. You can donate as little as like $1 a month. It's pretty easy. And that's how you fund this show, and we do things and get guests and make stuff happen and provide good content, because there's a lot of bad content out there, right? I mean, fake news, CNN, all this stuff, WikiLeaks releases and exposing all these things. And even newer kind of media like Vox and these kinds of other millennial places, they're not really giving a drastically different view than what you're getting on the mainstream. So podcasting is where it's at. Podcasting and YouTube is getting cracked down upon. So there's a lot of podcasts out there. If there's subjects that you're interested in, just go and search, and or topics that you want to hear about, or events that happen that you want some more information on. The best thing to do is just go and search the podcasts that are out there and find what you're looking for, and listen to a bunch of different ones, and then try and kind of do your own opinion. I know it's a lot of work, right? But we, as I said on one of the last episodes, we're all investigative journalists now. We have computers in our pockets and cameras, and we can talk to each other and find out what's going on. There's no need for gatekeepers. So it's a good time to be alive, and I think podcasting is definitely where it's at as far as unfiltered, raw, and like totally different views, real alternative views from anything else that you hear out there. And so Marc's got a great podcast, Lions of Liberty, and obviously it's a libertarian podcast. So go check that out, lionsofliberty.com, and everywhere podcasts are found. So I had different topic planned for this show, but that mass shooting happened and changed everything. So we had to talk about it, and it's like we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to. This is such a terrible thing that happens in our society, and this is supposed to be kind of more of like a fun psychedelic show, and talking about cool ideas that can change the world and stuff like that. And I don't want to bring it down by talking about the terrible stuff that's happened, but hey, this is the news of our day. This is what's happening, and we have to really do something about this. We can't just let this slip by as another wasted opportunity. Like, oh man, another mass shooting. Oh, okay. Well, what are we going to do? I mean, these aren't good events. Yes, people die every day. There's all sorts of problems that happen, and that sort of thing. But this is a special kind of thing. I mean, this is like a really unique, sick, twisted event that really damages us. It hurts. Obviously, people die and family members are lost and these terrible things happen. But what about the trauma? Like, what about the the collective trauma and the individual trauma of the people that are directly associated, family members and friends and people like that. And what is it like to know that like someone you loved was gunned down in that fashion, in that way? There's definitely a psychological weight to that definitely hits us all hard in our hearts and in our minds. It's just so heavy on our psyche. What does it do to people? What does it do to us as a country, as a people? What kind of baggage and trauma are we carrying around and affected by? I mean, this is a representation of who we are. This is a symptom of what we have agreed upon to live in. We've agreed in a certain kind of fashion, or maybe we haven't agreed because we didn't know that we had a choice to, and we're just kind of on autopilot and we're not really paying attention, but we're all participants in this reality. And when something like this happens, this is something has gone wrong in our reality, and we as a people need to kind of wake up and say, what are we going to do about this? This is not okay. We don't like this. So you have some people saying that, look, it's time to ban guns. We got to crack down on these gun laws. We got to do something. And I completely understand that, I totally get that. I get that reaction. I get that emotional need to really try and understand what's going on and not really being able to figure it out and just saying something must be done, anything, just something. So, I mean, look, the state passes all kinds of laws. Okay, fine, pass a law, do whatever you have to do. But is that really going to change the symptom springing out of this disease that we have in our culture, in our society, in our life, in this reality that we create together? Is that really going to solve the problem? I don't know. I don't think so. And then you have some people talking about, well, this is a mental health epidemic. This is, people are on medications and SSRIs, and it's been linked to these kinds of side effects and behaviors. And we've seen this before in mass shooters. And, we have this society that functions off of drugs. There's good drugs and there's bad drugs. And that's why I wanted to talk to Marc about the war on drugs. And the state deems which ones are the good drugs and which ones are the bad drugs, and a lot of people are hooked on these supposed good drugs, and we have this opium epidemic essentially, right? Where's the most opium grown? Well, it's in Afghanistan. Okay, so it's not really too hard to try to just look at the situation, look at these systems, look at these systems of power and wealth and influence. How do they function? How do they stay in power? It's not hard to just look at the facts. There's the facts, and there's the truth, and then there's what we want to believe, what we would like to believe, what would make us feel better about our lives and the world and the people in it if we just pushed ourselves to believe that thing. It's like we're always constantly calibrating, like what should we believe, what's more true, what's more real, what makes more sense. But we're biased because we obviously would like things to be a certain way. We would like things to make sense in a certain way. We would like to believe that this is, the world is a certain way, according to whatever our feelings are, whatever that's telling us, And for some people, it could be very heavy and very just totally disruptive to their psyche to find out that things are different from what they would like, so different from what they would like to believe. And, so you have all kinds of people with all kinds of theories and feelings and what they think is true and what's not and those sorts of things. But we don't know, right? Because like I said, there's the truth, there's the facts, there's what we would like to believe, and then there's what's also being told to us. to try and influence us to believe one thing or the other. So I just think that this is a very deep and complex issue, and when you have a show like this and you have the opinions that I have, I don't trust anything that the government says. I don't trust anything that the mainstream media says. I just don't understand how you could. And when you look at the official story that they're reporting, there's a lot of things that just don't add up and don't make sense. So there's a lot of questions that we should be asking. And like I said, I don't really want to do shows like these where we're talking about kind of heavy stuff like this. But you have to look at how do our leaders behave? They are the creators of this reality in a sense, but they don't have to be. Because they do so with force and coercion. There's a lot of problems in our system of leaders and people that we cast as leaders in this country. That's not really what a leader should be. A leader should lead by example. A leader should be somebody that doesn't lead with force and coercion, but somebody that is sought after and looked at for advice on things and wisdom. But we don't have that. We have people that sell weapons. We make the most weapons here. We sell the most weapons here. And, we have a problem with violence. We have a problem with war. We have a problem with guns. We have a problem. So we got to wake up and figure something out, right? And, this is a good guest to have on the show. Marc Clair, host of Lions of Liberty. Me and him are going to talk. In the beginning, we get into some things about Marc, how he became a libertarian and then started a podcast, and then we talk about some current events and stuff, and like I said, there's a bonus section as well. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and if you do, please go to iTunes, leave me a nice 5-star rating and review. I think we have 62 or 3 now, and that's great. I want to get to 100 by the end of the year. That would be really cool. And I think if you like this show, if you like the message and you believe in this stuff, then go and promote it and support it, and leave those ratings and reviews. And if we get a lot of ratings, reviews, and people subscribing to the podcast, it really shoots up in the rankings, and then that'll just bring more opportunity to this show. And I just want to say, this is a different show than I would like to think. This is a different show than most of the shows that are out there. I mean, the things that I decide to talk about when I turn on this microphone, the kinds of different topics that I get into, sometimes personal, sometimes having a guest on, sometimes just losing my mind and ranting about something. I trust you guys to give me honest feedback and lead me in the proper direction and make something that you really want, something that's really, that you're not hearing anywhere else, that's as authentic as it can be, and, as good as possible. So I appreciate all of you people for listening to this and for giving me that honest feedback. And the message is real. This is something that I truly am passionate about, and I truly believe in. So, I talk about spreading the message and sharing the show and liking and subscribing and leaving ratings and reviews and donating to the Patreon and stuff. It's because, maybe I'm delusional, but I really do want to, change the world. I really do want to do something good and do something positive. And help people as much as I possibly can with, obviously I'm just some buffoon with who just fucks around and records some shows and stuff. But, I read, I can read, but I like to be informed. I like to know what's going on. I like to see how I can help by sharing whatever I can share and doing whatever I can do. Like I said, I'm not an academic or a scholar or anything like that, but I try my best, and I just want to see a better world. So, I guess when I talk about promotion and all this kind of stuff, it's not necessarily for financial gain. It's more for spreading the messages that I speak about. And I think it's, maybe some people might say some shows are repetitive or whatever, but I always try and talk about different things, but always keep that core, the core beliefs of liberty, non-aggression, peace, tolerance, respect, love, compassion, empathy, getting in touch with ourselves and the mystery of life, the connection to the planet, the environment, the animals, and each other, understanding each other, knowing each other. and developing more communities of like-minded people and connecting with each other, refocusing what our values should be, what serves us, what fulfills us as human beings. And, it's because I just want to see, I think we can do better. I think that we're all smarter than what we've been told. We're all smarter than what we've learned or what has been exposed to us. We all have so much potential inside of us to really do something. We're very powerful creatures, look at what we've done so far, but we have to be careful. It's all about balancing that order and chaos. We've gotten really obsessed with the fact that we're so powerful that look at how much order we could bring into the world, and we've really squeezed out that chaos. But we need that chaos. We need that balance between chaos and order. So the order doesn't become chaos because we've used so much order that it's imbalanced, I actually just saw the trailer for The Force Awakens, so it reminds me of Star Wars. And I think that's why that movie is such a good mythology. It's, the choice that you have to go to one extreme or the other, but it's really more about that balance in the middle, Understanding, as Jordan Peterson says, understanding your capacity as evil for a human being, seeing yourselves in the shoes of people who do evil things, and then knowing that you are a part of that because you're a human being just like them, and we're all the same, but choosing to do good, choosing to enact good in the world, and choosing to live a life where you can bring about less suffering for yourself and for others, so that when you die, you can say, I've done something here. The world was a better place because I lived in it. I existed. And with that being said, me and Marc Clair are going to try and figure out how we can do that. We talk about some things, some theories, some this and that, but this intro has gone longer than I had planned. Marc's a great guy. You guys are going to love this podcast. Enjoy.
Psychedelics are illegal not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally laid down models of behavior and information processing. They open to us the possibility that everything we know is wrong.
We don't need new laws that control our consciousness and rigidly place it in a prison.
Cognitive liberty. The fact that as adults, if we're not hurting anybody else, we should have the right to explore the contours of our own consciousness without any mediation or legislation on the part of somebody else.
Reject authority. Authority is a lie.
Voice of perception.
Information is power, but we have to seize the opportunity.
We got Marc Clair, host of Lions of Liberty, here today with me. Thanks for joining me, Marc.
Mike, it's a pleasure to be here, man.
Excellent. Yeah. So, wanted to have you on.
I feel like we just hung up not long ago from you being on our show.
Oh yeah, man, that was fun. That was a good time. Love hanging out with the Lions. Good crew over there. You get the daily doses of liberty, right?
Almost daily. 3 days a week, but
3 days a week. It feels like
yeah.
daily. I mean, it's constant.
It can be daily. There's enough of a back stock of episodes that you could definitely listen every day for a while if you're a new listener, for sure.
Yeah, and you guys have been putting out just great content, for what, like years now, right? A couple years?
Yeah, it's crazy. I just looked at the calendar. I'm not really good with, birthdays, anniversaries, stuff like that in general, but we just passed 4 years from the day I just realized of when I just randomly started the show with very little of a plan outside of I am a libertarian. I'm very passionate about these beliefs. I like podcasts. I should do one. And that's literally all I had thought of when I started it. And obviously it's evolved quite a bit since then.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar with me as well. And then you kind of learn as you go, and then you just become, now you're just, like a professional now. It's just like a thing. Like, you know how to do it. You pick up the pieces as you go. So it's pretty cool. It's cool that we could just do this, in this day and age. We could just, get a microphone, plug it in, start reaching out to people and deliver people the truth as we see it, right?
I could have done it like 15 years ago, but no one would have known. It would just be me in a room with a microphone connected to nothing. It really is an incredible thing, though. Like, I think it's crazy that, I mean, there are a lot of people taking advantage. It's crazy if people don't see the amazing advantages we have now, where you can literally buy, I mean, you do not need expensive equipment. We were talking about this before the show. You can have a very, very cheap, a very affordable podcast setup, and you can, within, with a little bit of work and some, help of a few different websites that range from very cheap to free, you can put out a high quality sounding podcast and get it out to the world. And maybe 1 million people won't listen to it on day one, but if you put in the legwork and try to get it out there, and you put out good content, you will draw people, you will affect people, you will reach people. And sometimes you think to yourself, well, is this really worth it? Am I really reaching these people? And you look at the numbers, and the numbers are good, and they go down a little bit sometimes. But what I like to do now is I will picture, all right, let me picture the number of people that download a particular podcast. It's not millions. I'm not going to pretend I get millions of listeners ever. But you picture that number of people that might download one episode. Picture them all in a room listening to you talk to someone else, or just talk yourself. Then it's like, wow, this is mind-blowing suddenly.
Yeah, definitely. And I always I remember this speech that Tom Woods gave. I forgot what it was, where it was, maybe at a Mises event or something. But at the end of the speech, he was like, he said, I just want to end it by telling people, if you believe in these ideas, if you believe in the ideas of liberty, if this is something that's compelling to you, get out there and share it. Whatever you have to do, start a blog, start a podcast, do whatever you have to do to just communicate this message. Start a YouTube channel. And I always thought that was really cool, because it's like, you like you said, it's anybody can kind of get involved in this if you're passionate enough, and you can spread these messages that we care about, because quite frankly, there's not a lot of great messages coming out from kind of the mainstream. There's not a lot of great, stuff that's out there. And so it's kind of left to us, the people to do something about it and create what we want to see in the world. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, if you really want to hear about Donald Trump or hurricanes or shootings, then you should just stick to the mainstream media. If you're interested in anything else at all, you should get off that thing and hop onto podcasts, hop onto YouTube. There's so many great documentaries out there. I mean, there's so much great work that people are doing independently now. I'm seeing so much of it, and anybody can get funding from anybody too. Like we can put it out there that we're making this great documentary, and next thing you know, thousands of people you never met can be funding it, and that's just simply not possible. At least not in the way it is now, like maybe 20 years ago, like unheard of. So we've come so much far, and in a short amount of time, I can't even imagine. Maybe it'll go to too much of an extreme at some point, where you're born and they like set up a podcast feed for you, and as soon as you can start talking, everyone's got a podcast. Like, I don't know, it might go too far at some point, but I think we're in a pretty healthy area right now as far as people creating content goes.
Yeah, the newborn baby podcast. That sounds like a good idea.
It's already happened, because every time I think of a podcast like that should exist, like, it's already out there. Someone's got it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, but that's a great thing too. It's like there's for any niche that you want. I never know, is it niche or niche? I'm just gonna say niche.
I've always said niche, but
niche. All right, I'll go with.
I've been known to mispronounce a word or two in my day, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, any niche that you want. Where else can you go to hear the loquacious sounds of liberty and getting injected into your limbic system, mixed with the mind-expanding, mind-altering realm of psychedelics? Right here, Microdelic.
That's a beautiful tagline.
Yeah, well, I try. I don't have a great, like you got the. Are you ready to roar?
That should be on a T-shirt.
I should have started. Yeah, I should have started out with like, are you ready to take 5 grams of mushrooms? And you're like, I'm already.
All right, 4 grams then.
Yeah. But yeah,
all right, we'll just do some microphone thing. Okay, whatever.
So I want to. We'll definitely get into some of that later. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But one of the things that some people might find it's odd sometimes for me to get political or something on this show, but I think it's all connected, and this isn't just a druggy show or a tripping show. We're talking about liberty, we're talking about freedom, we're talking about how it all connects, the human condition, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like you're a good guy to talk to about all these things. So how did some long-haired hippie from California get into the liberty movement?
That is a great question. Well, maybe the fact that I'm not from California originally is part of that, because if I grew up here, I it's quite possible I might have a totally different mentality about things.
Where'd you grow
I don't
up?
really know. So I grew up. I was originally born in Buffalo, New York, and then I when I was about 8 years old, my family moved to Connecticut, and which is also a very liberal state, really. But my parents are not liberal. My dad is a lifelong dyed in the wool, press that R button down the line every time kind of Republican. So I definitely grew up with that as sort of what I heard. I didn't even know, I think, whether I agreed or didn't with him at that time. I was just like, well, this is what my dad thinks. Now he seems pretty smart. He's got like a job and money, so maybe he knows some things. So I kind of listened to him, but I definitely didn't buy into like the politics I heard hook, line, and sinker, because I distinctly remember this. And not only did I remember this a little bit, but I actually interviewed my dad in my first year of my podcast. I did a Father's Day special, and I want to redo it again. I want to maybe revisit it next year. It'll be like 5 years at that point. I interviewed my dad, and he told me, he remembers when I was a kid that I would always like ask people questions. And then if I didn't think they were telling the truth, or I didn't think they were giving me the full story, I would continue to ask questions and ask more and more, deeper questions, until I finally got to the bottom of whatever, weird knowledge I was seeking at the time, even well before I thought about politics. And then, even when I was a teenager, or even younger, probably just driving around the car with him, the only thing my dad listened to was like AM radio, and obviously like mostly like conservative talk show host type things. But even then I remember saying things to him like, well, why should this thing be illegal? Why should there be a law about this? So I think even before I even considered, political philosophy, I did have these kind of thoughts ingrained in me of questioning things and not just accepting everything I was told at face value. I always thought there's got to be more to the story about whatever it is, whether it's like what my mom's making for dinner or, deeper things like politics. So, I was always very inquisitive and digging, and I think that's probably what led me down this path ultimately.
We got to get to the truth of this chicken cutlet, Mom. What's it? I want to know. Where'd it come from?
Chicken pot pie? Really?
Right.
What's this white substance? I have no idea what this is. It's delicious, though. It's fantastic, but
so wait,
tell me what's this made out of?
I think that most people probably would that's how their views get shaped is from where they grow up and their parents and things like that. So were your parents kind of like inquisitive and asking questions, or your dad, or was that just something that you had and you were just like that?
Yeah, I think to some extent my dad was as well. I think for him, his politics largely just came from the fact that, he had a couple of brothers and a sister, and they were all abused quite a bit. And he did not, his parents did not send him to college. Most liberals today would call my dad privileged because he's a white dude who's, relatively successful in his career or whatever. He's middle class white guy. Privileged, right? But he wasn't given anything from his dad. He was given abuse, and he turned that into making a life for himself. And I'm not going to get into too many details, but his siblings did not make it nearly out of that as well as he did, and he focused all his energy on making his own life. And he didn't get a dime from college from his dad. He joined ROTC. He worked his butt off. He worked 2 jobs. He put himself through college. He was in the Air Force. He built. He became a successful salesman all on his own, and he did all this stuff, and I think in many ways that shaped his idea of republicanism at the time, which was, I say at the time, I don't know if it's really changed, but what we're told Republicans is they're all about personal responsibility and individual whatever, and I think that was what appealed to him for that brand of politics. And that was at the time when really almost 100% of the population probably bought into the left-right paradigm. I've been able to sort of crank him out of that a little bit. I mean, I'm pretty sure he still goes and hits that R every few years, but he definitely thinks about things a lot more deeper. So I'm sure I probably got some of that quality from him as well, but hopefully he got some of that from me also. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's so sad and terrible when you hear about, people that come from, abusive households and stuff. And so that's so amazing to see that he made it out of that, and he turned it into, positive, and then, was able to provide for his family. I mean, that's an amazing story because, if you're around this kind of aggressive, abusive environment, it can be very tough, and that could be very, psychologically damaging as well as physically damaging to people. And so it's good to see that, that he made it out and he was able to provide and give you a better life than maybe something that he had. So, that's
Absolutely.
and that's just, that I believe that really starts, I love when, I first heard Stefan Molyneux talking about, peaceful parenting and, how he was tying it into libertarianism with, non-aggression and all this kind of stuff. And it just made so much sense to me. It's like, why would you ever hit a defenseless, innocent, child? It just doesn't seem, right, or even be verbally abusive to these people. And so, I think a lot of problems from our world definitely stem from that, people being brought up in these situations. So, Yeah,
I agree. And there's a lot of, I'm one of these people that doesn't have kids but has thoughts on parenting. So whatever, sue me. But a lot of people take issue with when people say, well, you shouldn't hit your kids, and they'll say, well, you've never been a parent, so you don't know. And they're right; they are correct.
Right.
But I agree with you strongly that one of the first things you learn is that a solution to somebody doing something you don't want is to get hit. I mean, that's gotta affect your life and the way you look at things. You're gonna maybe be more likely to go to school and think, well, this kid's not doing what I like, I'm gonna hit him. And maybe that kid's now he's been hit a bunch in school. Now he's gonna go out into the world and become a total psycho and kill people because a bunch of people used to hit him in school. So I mean, I think this stuff can really have a ripple effect, and I think so much of our minds are shaped and the way we view the world are secretly, unconsciously shaped when we're children. Stuff we don't even remember is affecting the way we're acting 20 years later. So I definitely think that, look, I definitely make a distinguishment. I personally think I wouldn't spank my child, but I get some people do give their child a spanking, and that's not necessarily the same as true abuse. I'm not going to equate those things. But I philosophically think you probably shouldn't hit a kid. I mean, I totally think if a kid's about to walk into traffic, you yank his ass out of there as hard as you can. I mean, there's not situations where you shouldn't be using physical exertion, but to me, as punishment for whatever, not finishing your dinner or something, it seems so anti how adults are expected to act. And as adults, we say you never hit another person. Well, not everybody says that. Now you can punch someone if if you think they're a Nazi, I guess. But generally, in normal society, at work, if someone messes up and screwed something up for me, I'm not allowed to go punch them. That's just not that's not how it works. It's so insane to think that. Yet somehow we think that as children, maybe we should simplify the message by just smacking them instead of actually, trying another method. And again, I get it. I'm not a parent, and I know parenting is difficult, and I totally get that. And I'm not trying to judge the people out there that use some spanking. I'm not going on an anti-spanking tirade, but I do think that in general, the more you're hit as a kid, the more you'll hit as an adult, probably.
Yeah, and it's just that just general kind of tension that causes, people to. One of the things that I think, is that obviously, we're talking about liberty and whatnot. It's with our government, I mean, they're kind of hostile. They use force and coercion and aggression to kind of get their way. And it's well, how does that affect people, living under that condition? Is that traumatic? What does that do to somebody's psyche, to be living under kind of a hostile, in a hostile area? I was just thinking
that's a really interesting analogy. I mean, you could look at, in many ways, and there are probably a lot of terrorists who are just simply evil people out to do evil things. But there's probably a lot of terrorists who have been so abused, in a sense, by American bombs, by soldiers patrolling their neighborhoods, maybe shooting their family members, busting into their homes, that have been abused, or maybe literally abused in Abu Ghraib or something like that, where you're abused so much, the only thing you can know is violence and response. And that's very similar to, I think, how a lot of abused children turn out.
Yeah, so that was always kind of the violence thing, the aggression, that was the thing that really always stuck out to me when I first started approaching, the ideas of liberty. I was like, oh yeah, this totally makes sense. Don't hit people and don't take their stuff. That's what we're all taught, from teachers and, society in general when we're children and things like that. So yeah, well, that seems like it makes sense. And then if you just stick to that logic and apply it to all areas of life, then it seems like it makes sense. What was the first kind of, and I should just say, by the way, I grew up kind of opposite of you. I was in New York, and, my parents are Democrats and teachers. And so I just was like, oh yeah, okay. And it was during the Bush era where it's well, obviously Bush is evil. So, it was just this Republican always seemed like the butt end of a joke, so it just seemed like the people on the left, the liberals, they were the ones that always wanted peace. And I kind of came into this whole thing on like an anti-war position, and then I was like, oh wait, oh, they're these libertarian people. Oh, that's crazy. I didn't know about that. So what was your thing? What gave you the introduction to liberty?
It's really funny you say that, because I'll get to that in a second. But I did eventually get into libertarianism largely because of anti-war beliefs too, which is not how I was, sort of raised. I mean, my dad wasn't raving about war, but he's a military guy. He generally, quote unquote, supported the troops. He was in favor of the Iraq War, not the second one, but I mean, when I was a kid, I remember the first one. He was like, yeah, we gotta go get this guy. So, I was definitely raised in an environment where that was fine. War was not it was not an anti-war environment by any means, but I kind of came upon that on my own. So in college, kind of two things happened at once. One was a friend of mine, Howie Snowden, who is a member of the Lions Liberty, has been on a lot of our podcasts. People that listen to our show are definitely familiar with him. He was a friend of mine in college, and when he was in high school, he was a page in Congress, a congressional page for a Democrat, actually. But as a page, you interact with a lot of different congressmen, and he just kept telling me about this one old dude named Ron Paul he used to hang out with. Like, he'd go to his office and he'd like sit there and like he would tell him about his books and stuff like that, and like talk about liberty. I was like, really? You just like hung out with this like congressman? That's awesome. Weird, but okay. Yeah, but I mean, the way like I could see his passion talking about this guy, I was like, this is so crazy. Why would he be this passionate about it? Maybe I should look into him. And then I started looking up, reading. Ron Paul had a weekly column. I'm not sure if he still does, but it's called Texas Straight Talk. And it was just him like shooting the shit on whatever the politics of the day was. So I started reading that simply because Howie told me I should read this guy. And he's a Republican, so it was like an easy transition for me coming from that Republican side of things. But what struck me about a lot of his columns was he would spend, I think, more time, it seemed, criticizing Republicans than Democrats. And that just blew my mind, because I had grown up with, no, Republicans, they're on the same team. They all agree with everything ever in the whole world, and they disagree with Democrats on every other thing in the world. And it's that simple. There's really nothing more to it. So it did blow my mind a little bit to see, wait a minute, this guy's like criticizing everybody. Like, that's not normal. And so that got me to think a little bit more about, like, what does this guy believe? Like, what's at his core? Why is he doing this? And around the same time, Howie gave me a book, Harry Brown, How to Live Free in an Unfree World. And that's not, it's a political book in a way, but it's more like how you can live a freer life outside of the confines of government. It's not really philosophical about why you'd want to do that as much as just how you would do it. And I just found that entire take on things really interesting. So that kind of, I didn't become a libertarian at that point, but it planted some seeds that I thought were fairly interesting.
Yeah, I thought.
But around that time.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Harry Brown just seemed so friendly and approachable and such a good salesman for liberty. He was.
I mean, he was literally a salesman for a living. I actually read one of his books on sales, and it's an amazing book. I mean, I don't remember the name offhand, but it shouldn't be hard to find. But look up Harry Brown sales and you'll find it. He was a great salesman in life. That was how he built his career. And then he was a great salesman for liberty. And that's why he ended up, I think he ran 2 presidential campaigns. And I do remember seeing him even back then, even in 2000, I do remember seeing like an appearance of him on Meet the Press and just thinking like, wow, this guy makes sense. Like this guy actually makes sense. He's not just like repeating political phrases like everyone else does. He's actually just, making logical arguments, which is just it. So it shouldn't be mind-blowing, but that was very mind-blowing because that's not what you saw in politics. And I think that between Harry Brown and Ron Paul, it helped me realize how bullshit most politics was, how bullshit the entire left-right Republican-Democrat thing was. And I definitely started to get that sense. And this was around the time that I woke up on, I believe it was a Tuesday morning, and I woke up, somebody sent me an AOL instant message, AIM, for those old folks that used that back in the day. Hey, turn on the TV. I'm like, what channel? Like, just turn on the TV. It was like somebody else in my house. And I turned it on and, I saw 9/11 happening. I saw a plane hit. I first heard about a plane. I like everyone else, I pictured a tiny little plane just sticking, some little goofy guy just rolled into the tower and and I saw that this was definitely more than that. And then live on TV, saw that other plane hit. And as you can imagine, blew my fucking mind. I mean, I just could not even believe what I was seeing, that somebody in the world, some group of people, somebody hated people so much, hated the people in this tower or this country or something enough to just kill themselves and kill thousands and thousands of people. And that really got me thinking, like, why? It can't just be because they're evil and we're good. Because I've already started to think that this is a little bit of bullshit. So how can that possibly be that simple? So I mean, I wasn't thinking that day, but as time that day, I was, the next day I was basically, with George Bush, like, go get him, hugging all the firefighters. I mean, I was all in on that. I mean, I was so caught up in the emotion of feeling attacked, feeling like my family, my country was attacked. I definitely felt that way back then. But eventually, I think the change for me started to come when I turned on the news. And it was all about how, I remember seeing they were all from Saudi Arabia. Okay. I don't know much about that country. I know it exists. And but we're going to bomb this other place, Afghanistan. And I had heard of it. I knew it existed. I kind of remember Bill Clinton had bombed it once, but I didn't know much about that either. And it really made me realize, hey, I need to start learning some stuff. Like if I'm going to understand this at all, or even begin to, I have to know like what has led to this. And that just started a journey where I eventually turned into like a YouTube, rabbit hole journey where you're watching a million videos. But even before that, I just started reading a lot of articles about, foreign policy. I read a lot of Ron Paul stuff on foreign policy, and it really started to click with me that what we just talked about, that a lot of the time, America is not the golden princess, the golden king, or whatever of the world that we're raised to believe it is. And that's not to say it's all on the opposite side and all bad either. But the world's not black and white. The United States government has not operated in a black and white way in its history, and it's done a lot of bad things to a lot of people, and it's hurt a lot of innocent people. And at some point, some of those people are act out, much like the abused child will eventually probably act out. So will these abused people. And even as I say this, I start to think, man, this sounds like I'm just sympathetic to people that do terrorist acts, and I'm not at all. I mean, my whole thing is about ending these cycles of violence. But to end something, to fix something, you have to understand it, and you have to separate the idea of I'm attacked, my country is attacked, and that the emotion that goes along with it, which is very difficult to do as humans, and start to really look at things in a critical way, and think, what would I do? What if I was raised in a village or not a village, or a town, whatever, in Iraq, and when I was 12, my house was bombed, and I'm the only survivor, and my entire family was dead, and all the bombs said United States on them, and then 10, 12 years later, when I'm a 22-year-old running a little shop in Baghdad, my shop gets blown up, and the United States comes in again and kills half of my friends, and now they're patrolling my streets, and these dudes are pointing guns at me everywhere I go. At some point, I might snap. At some point, these ISIS guys rolling in might seem like the guys to join up with if they're opposing these guys. And that understanding that is so critical to understanding the way the world works and the way humans work. And it doesn't justify the acts, but you have to understand it. You have to start to understand the motivations of people if you're ever going to stop the cycles of violence.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head where you have to understand how humans act and how we act and we behave in the world. And it's like, it can be difficult a lot of times to kind of put yourself in the position of the other, because with all the news, the cable 24-hour news cycle of the graphics and the terror alert and the just the way that they present it and the repetition of what they say and how it's delivered to us in a way to kind of induce fear to boost ratings so people tune in so they can sell ads, and it's this whole kind of thing that I think develops just naturally because of the way that the process is, but it really we definitely dehumanize the other people. And so I remember after that period of time hearing people say, well, let's just nuke the whole area, let's just nuke the Middle East, like who cares, like they're all savages, and one of my favorite comedians of all time, Greg Giraldo, who passed away actually a while ago, but he used to say, what's the difference? I think really the difference is that over there they go, ah, la, 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 la. He's like, so we just look at that and go, I don't like that, let's well,
that's weird. So they must be terrible.
Exactly. That's weird. They must all be terrorists. They must all
Meanwhile,
be
you look at they look at images of like Americans at a football game, like dressed crazy and just going, "Rah, yeah," and they're like, wow, so what fucking savages, Jesus, what's wrong with these people?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's having that perspective and having that kind of human connection, I think, that is really important. I think that just understanding that we're all people, we're all the same. And a lot of times we're motivated by very similar things. Like, Imagine if we had tanks rolling down the streets here and things like that. I think that you would see people here, being radicalized, quote unquote radicalized or whatever, going over there or something. If the situation were reversed, how would we behave? I like that you pointed that out. I guess while we're on this topic, we're talking about this of course one of the probably the defining terrorist attack and moment of our time. And then, after that, I think you actually tweeted something today about, because now this mass shooting in Las Vegas has happened, and it's just hysteria, and the same kind of pattern happens. And anytime one of these major events happen, the news cycles go, and the celebrities are crying, and the pleas for justice and this and that come. And I think you tweeted something that said, what passing laws in heated post-tragedy times gets you unlimited surveillance and 7 wars? No.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. I did tweet that.
Yeah. And it's so I thought that was a good tweet because immediately, we'll talk about this mass shooting that happened in Las Vegas because it's just such a horrific, tragic event that happened, and then all of a sudden you see, it's guns. Like we have to pass legislation, we have to ban guns because obviously that's the problem. That's the issue here. And it seems to me that the mainstream media comes out with this narrative or just maybe doesn't dig into it too much. And it's just like, there was a guy, he went crazy. We don't really know the motive, but all these people are dead, and we gotta do something about the gun problem in America. And then the internet's abuzz, and everybody on the they try and present it like it's this black and white issue, and you have the people on the left and the people on the right saying it's the guns, we got to pass gun laws, and then no one's taking my guns, and then everybody's just screaming and yelling at each other, and who knows if we ever get to the bottom of this stuff. So I know you didn't really get a chance to dig into it too much, and to be quite honest, I didn't really either. But yeah, I mean, what's going on in America where we have, these mass shootings all the time now? It just seems to be a part of a normal thing. Like, it's just like, oh, another mass shooting. What's happening, Marc Clair? Tell me give me the answers.
I'll give you all the answers in 30 seconds. There's a couple of ways to look at it, but I mean, the first one is, and I think I will feel callous saying this, but it's true. This is not a common event, despite the fact that it feels like one.
Right.
And despite the fact that people will say there's been a mass shooting more than every day and it's this year, and it's really a very disingenuous line of thought that's been put out there lately, where they've redefined mass shooting so many times that now, if a couple dudes get into an argument in a parking lot and they shoot each other and 3 or 4 people are shot, I guess, that's a mass shooting. And that's literally put in the exact same category as what happened in Las Vegas or as what happened at the Pulse shooting. And that's so very disingenuous that there is certainly a problem with violence. I don't like to equate gun violence as special category. I don't know why there is an obsession with gun violence. I guess on a human level, on an emotional level, I do understand it because, yeah, guns can look scary. Like, someone getting shot is scary. Like, that is scary as shit. Like, I mean, come on. This one little somebody could just go up to me and point this thing at my head and pull a little button and I'll be dead. And I'll be dead just like that because this little piece of metal just flew through my brain. That is an emotionally very scary thought on a base level. So in a way, I definitely do empathize with people who fear guns and want to ban them. But I also don't think they've thought this through at all, or most of them have not put a lot of deep thought into it. And it's very difficult to get people to put deep thought into things when you're hyper emotional, which is why I kind of tweeted that out, because look what did happen after 9/11. They passed 2 main pieces of legislation, and everyone was very emotional, and no one wanted to oppose it. I mean, except one guy, Ron Paul, opposed the Patriot Act. At least even Ron Paul didn't oppose the authorization for military force. He later regretted it, when he saw what happened. But at the time, even he was sort of swept up, you could say, in the emotion.
Sure.
And when I referred to that unlimited surveillance, I'm talking about the Patriot Act, which basically opened up surveillance, a lot of which is probably already happening, to be perfectly honest. But with a lot of the new technology, it's become easier and easier and easier. They're probably listening to us now, Mike, even though we're going to release this podcast. They're probably listening to us now.
Definitely.
They probably have heard. Congratulations, any Micadelic or Lions Liberty fans who are in the NSA who get to hear this advanced release of the episode live. Congrats. But yeah, I mean, so we got the Patriot Act, which led directly or indirectly to, really expanding the ability for the government to spy on people legally, completely legally, and without, specific warrants. And also led to the authorization for military force, which has been used to justify interventions in, let's see if I can get them all, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, I believe is another one.
Yep.
There's a couple I'm missing probably, but I know we've bombed Pakistan. I don't know if it gets included in the 7 wars list because that wasn't really a war, but we do some drone bombing in Pakistan as well. I know I'm missing a couple countries, but I shouldn't, because it's so ridiculous that we're bombing enough countries that I can forget a couple,
Right.
It's really crazy. But it has led to, this is supposed to be a focused thing that was for finding these specific people that did 9/11. Meanwhile, weeks later, I'm talking weeks later, George Bush is at a press conference telling people how it's not really important we get Osama bin Laden. This is about a bigger thing. This is about fighting terrorism around the world. And at least it's actually one of the more honest things that he's ever said. It is about fighting around the world, and that's not even to mention all of the interventions we don't really talk about because they're not public and they're not wars. But we've had troops that have operated in multiple countries in Africa, special forces that have been in Africa fighting supposed terrorist groups there, or maybe real terrorist groups. I'm not saying they're all supposed, but there's always an enemy to fight, and they always happen to be living right around a bunch of natural resources. So that's an interesting coincidence. But when all of these laws, if you told everybody, here's what we're going to do, we're going to pass a law that says the U.S. government can go to war any point in time with whoever it wants. All they have to do is just kind of point and say it's about terrorism, and then we're going to pass the other law that says you can spy on everyone at any time for any reason, as long as you, again, say it has something to do with terrorism. If you said that on September 10th, 2001, people would think that was a terrible idea, I hope. But when you say it on 9/12, everyone's in. We got to do it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing now. This is I'll go with the line. It's the worst mass shooting. I mean, people have mentioned Wounded Knee as a bigger mass shooting. That was the government killing a bunch of Native Americans. But as far as our current context, it is like the biggest one of these incidents where someone just goes and shoots a bunch of people. But yeah, I mean, I'm seeing the same kind of fervor, and I know it's a bit exaggerated because of where I live out here in Los Angeles, and the people I interact with are probably on the most extreme end possible of this. But I'm seeing the same kind of fervor, the same kind of just do something, just fix this. How can you oppose fixing this? And that really is the argument to any kind of questioning of any proposals of banning guns or changing gun laws or anything like that. The biggest thing I get is, how could you possibly oppose this? How could you be so heartless? And it's a purely emotional argument. And when we're only thinking with emotion, we're gonna act the least rationally.
Right. Yeah, no, I know. And it just because it is one of these things where, like, I could see myself maybe 10, 15 years ago being on that side as well, because it's like, clearly, obviously, I mean, come on, people, we got to do something about this. But I think people are just so kind of confused, or just and in this emotional state where they just want something to be done, even if it's just this symbolic gesture or whatever, that we're gonna ban certain kinds of weapons or something, that it will just make them feel good. But I just don't think that this could have been something that could have been prevented. And a lot of the points that I was making was that it's like, this is a symptom of living in an empire. We have this empire, this global empire where, look, we produce the most amount of weapons, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, all these weapons manufacturers. We sell billions of dollars of arms to countries like Saudi Arabia. I mean, that like you said, the terrorists were at and stuff. And then, over the years, we hear about all of these like deep state coups and operations, and, even CIA, MK Ultra plans and mind control. I think there's a new Netflix show about it, and about this kind of stuff. And
I'll check that out.
Yeah, it's called Wormwood by I forgot the guy's name, but he's a pretty famous director. He directed that movie with Donald Rumsfeld, where a documentary about Donald Rumsfeld, like the unseen, the unknown knowns or whatever. Errol Morris is his name. Errol Morris. Yeah. But it's like over time these things come out and we find out about these things, about, FBI doing, whatever with Martin Luther King and this and that. And
right.
All these things, they kind of seep out. And now with the internet, it's like you can find out these things. So anyway, my point is that it's like, what the hell is going on with our country where these kinds of things are happening? And, I think the conversation has to be at a deeper level. Obviously, it's not ban guns. I mean, that's just obviously not what it is. I think it's something a little bit deeper than that. And so do you know any of the kind of details about this particular mass shooting that just happened?
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to take this in a little weird direction.
Oh, sure. Please. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a guy called William Cooper?
Yeah.
I think he was called Bill Cooper. He was kind of Alex Jones, pre-Alex Jones, without like being hyperbolic. He was a very like steady spoken. He had a radio show, and he wrote a book called Behold a Pale Horse. He actually, I believe he was killed by police. I believe it was just after 9/11. I could be wrong. It might have been just before. He is someone that some people say predicted 9/11. Some people say that Alex Jones predicted 9/11 too. But Bill Cooper does have a thing where he said there's going to be an attack, a major terrorist attack. They're going to blame it on Osama bin Laden, and it's going to be the impetus for war and whatever. Anyway, he had a book called Behold a Pale Horse. Part of that book, and I remember it very distinctly, very vividly, and it's before, I remember reading this, even before all these recent shootings. I would say maybe Sandy Hook is like the first of the modern shootings, or maybe Colorado. He said there will be shootings in schools, in public places, in open areas, and these will be used to justify the banning of guns and the taking away of rights and the creation and the implementation of the total police state. That's a paraphrase, of course, but that I distinctly remember that. Now, there's a lot of other weird stuff in that book, and that's why it's a weird direction, because if anybody looks it up, they're going to find a bunch of weird shit, including aliens and all sorts of other things.
Good.
So,
we like weird. Weird's good.
Yes. Well, I'm on Mycadelic. See, I can get super weird.
There you go.
That's why I was so excited about this interview. Because, on Lions of Liberty, it's a show about libertarianism. I'm trying to teach people about the ideas of liberty, and I'm trying not to scare people away too much right away. Anyway, if you get scared away eventually because I say guns should all be legal, including automatic weapons, then fine, be scared at that point. And if you have to depart at that point, fine. But I don't want to necessarily bombard them with my my weird stuff right away. Well, that's why I come on Mycadelic.
Exactly. That's exactly what we want to do. We want to bombard you with weirdness. But really, I mean, in all honesty, it's like I think that keeping an open perspective and really kind of one of the things that I think is so fundamental about once you discover libertarian ideas, once you kind of awaken whatever way that is, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that definitely credit psychedelics to kind of like shining a light maybe, and one of the things that I play in the introduction to the show is that from Terence McKenna, where he says psychedelics aren't illegal because a loving government cares that you might jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they decondition you to the cultural rules and norms that you've been conditioned to accept as normal. So it's like we live in this world where where our belief systems, our values, or everything is being conditioned to accept a certain kind of paradigm. The government loves you; they're looking out for you. This is what you should accept and believe. We would never, they attacked us for our freedom. Well, why else? There was no other reason, the blah, 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 and all this stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important to understand, like, once you understand one simple thing, I think, is that, from a libertarian perspective, is that, that the government relies on force and coercion, has a monopoly on violence, and that is the essential kind of raw, boiled down to the core fundamental truth about what they are. Once you understand that, then I'm not surprised about any of these things that any of these kinds of conspiracies or whatever gets floated out there. I'm willing to entertain them as ideas. I'm not willing to declare that they're true, because I like to see evidence, but I'm willing to be open to asking the questions, to having the conversation, to engaging in the dialogue.
That's what happens with all these events. There's always it happens, it's on the news, and then within seeming hours, you got the whole story. It's right out there. The media puts it all out, and we figured it out. It's this one guy. He went nuts. He bought a bunch of guns to Vegas. He shot a bunch of people. You don't need to know anything else. And then after that very initial period, if you question any of that, you are the crazy person. You are the crazy person for saying, wait, well, what about this video I just saw where I heard they hear a lot of gunfire and they're running and it's really close, and then they hear gunfire over there and then they hear it close again. That doesn't seem like it's coming from the same place. Yeah. And maybe it's an echo effect, and I just don't know enough about that kind of stuff to realize that. And I'm totally open to that. But with a lot of people, even asking that question, oh, you're nuts. Oh, you're
yeah. How dare you? This is not a time to do that. We should be, sending our thoughts and prayers.
If anything, this is the time to figure out what just happened. That is the time. This is definitely the time. It's not the time to pass crazy new laws. It's the time to figure out what happened, and then you can more honestly address it, legislation wise or otherwise. That wouldn't be the path I'd recommend unless we're talking about repealing laws. But
Yeah, so I posted this thing on my Facebook. Someone wrote by the name of Matthew Rothbard, of all last names. What a great last name!
I know this character. He's a listener of our program.
Oh, cool. So yeah, I'm gonna read this thing that he posted, but
not his real last name.
I assumed, yeah. But
he's Murray's son. He's here, bringing us continuous knowledge.
Yeah, great hero of liberty. And then I posted this thing, and then one of my friends commented "Oh, great, another truther thing or something," and I was like, you know what? I'm like, I really hate that. I hate that that name truther.
First of all, why is that a slur?
Right.
If you want truth, that should be the good thing, right?
Yeah, and it's why? I know, because it's when you get into this world where you're questioning the official narratives, it's a spectrum, right? It's a wide spectrum from David Icke, reptiles rule over us, right, to Alex Jones, this is SJW, Antifa, liberal thing, George
to
Soros.
Paul Joseph Watson.
Yeah, exactly. To the Western civilization crumbling. There's all of the. It's this spectrum, So the flat earthers, right? So it's this crazy spectrum of wacko nut jobs, conspiracy people. But then there's just the people that are hey, there's something going on here. We want to find out the truth. So what's so wrong with that? Why does that have to be painted in such a negative light? And then, the other thing is this conspiracy name got all muddied and everything because of, I think, a lot of wackos in the scene. But it's do you ever think that
what's funny about that?
Maybe people would conspire, Why not?
The term conspiracy theory is a conspiracy theory.
Whoa.
It's not even a theory. There's actually stuff that came out about that.
I heard about that.
There's documents that were released, It's amazing. The government always, 40 years later, releases a bunch of documents that prove a bunch of conspiracies, and then people continue to say it's crazy to believe any of them, even when some of them are literally admitted sometimes. MK Ultra, that's a fact. Let's not, right. It's not what's speculative is whether it was successful, whether any of the brainwashed people carried out assassinations. That part is definitely speculative. But what is a fact is that MK Ultra happened. They had a program where they literally tried to brainwash people to turn them into killers using drugs. That is a fact. It's undeniable. Even the government doesn't deny it. And right. Yet, if you bring up something even like that, even something that is literally a fact that you can point to people, the documents, like Alex Jones might say, I got the documents.
I have the documents.
I mean, some of this stuff we do have the documents. Not all of the stuff Alex Jones says, but some of this stuff we do have the documents. But but one of the things that came out too was that the CIA crafted the term conspiracy theory in order to lump it in with all the crazy stuff, because there's certainly tons of crazy stuff. I might even argue mostly crazy stuff. But that doesn't mean that every questioning of anything is being a conspiracy theorist in that sense, or if I'm not sure exactly what happened on Sunday night in Las Vegas, that doesn't mean that I believe lizard people control the world. But right. They will all put you into that same category, and that was actually a planned conspiracy, you might say.
I remember reading that somewhere, and yeah, it's to discredit us and stuff. So it makes sense. These are smart people. I remember being at Liberty Fest a couple years ago, or one of those conferences, I forget which one it was, and Bob Murphy was talking. He was saying something like, a lot of people think these knuckleheads in Washington, they just can't get it done. They're just a bunch of knuckleheads. They don't know what they're doing. They're all confused and they're just idiots. And it's right. No, they know what they're doing, and that's part of the misdirect and part of the distraction that they want to make you think that, and it's
well, I think that's part of Trump's power. I think he's probably better at it than anyone ever in history, because everyone I work with, and who are all liberals and whatever, they're all California liberal hippies, like I would have been if I was actually raised here. They all firmly believe that Trump is just a total fucking idiot that just dumbed his ass into office. And man, if you really oppose Donald Trump, you got to really know. It's the same thing of understanding the cause of terrorism. You have to really know what you're working with, because if you think that there's just a buffoon up there just has no idea what he's doing, you're not going to be able to properly oppose that person, because I can tell you that is not the case. This man, whatever you think of him, did not just like stumble his way into his money, into his success, into his fame, into the presidency. You don't do that.
Right.
No one does that. You
Right.
cannot do it. Okay, like like the dumbest. Think of the dumbest guy you know, and that's how dumb people think Donald Trump is. That guy does not stumble his way to shit, because dumb people who are really as dumb as they think Donald Trump is don't do a goddamn thing.
Yeah,
they don't do anything.
He stumbles.
They just
his
maybe
way,
they get a job and they keep it for a few weeks. Like, come on,
Right.
stop it. You got to stop it.
Yeah.
And you're just not seeing. You're not understanding. It relates right back to the terrorism thing from before. I mean, you're not understanding your opponent. It's perfectly fine to oppose Donald Trump. I can't think of many, if any, political positions of his that I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. But when the opposition is all about how he's dumb and stupid and an asshole and whatever, and sure, he's an asshole, I'll give you that. But you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to be digging a hole further and further, because you're not going to take him seriously, and you're not going to think he's actually going to get anything done. When, I mean, legislatively, they haven't gotten anything done, but I mean, he's getting things done in some ways, in some weird ways, in some persuasive ways, you might say. So, I mean, he's definitely, I don't know if he's an effective president in the traditional sense that people want to judge that by, but he's changing the way politics is looked at, and maybe in some ways, maybe it's a good thing to get more people involved in politics. In another way, I don't know, maybe it's dumbing things down even more, because to me, most people that are opposed to him can't have a rational argument. And I feel like even George Bush, Obama, I could talk to critics of either side, and it could be a civil discussion. It could be rational. I could understand them. What I see now with Trump is this. No, just no reason, just blind rage and hatred, and just this guy's a moron, and we know, right? Those half the country's racist, and they voted for this idiot because they're idiots, and we're smarter, and we just have to resist until we can get power back and impose our smartness on the world.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, and because I remember, during the Bush era, the people who were opposing, it seemed like they were a little bit more intelligent and a little bit more critical of what was going on in a smarter way. And now it's like this blind rage of just like, oh, this buffoon, this idiot. And I really just think it boils down to the optics and everything, like the way he talks and the way he looks and the things that he says. I mean, that's all it is. It's just that.
Sure, yeah, but I think that was what I was getting to before I got a little sidetracked in my rant there. But I think that's part of his plan, you might say. I think part of his image is being the buffoon. Like, he wants people to think he's a buffoon. How much easier is it to defeat an enemy if they don't know your tactics? It's the art of war. It's Sun Tzu. You want to disguise yourself in every way. This is a brilliant man. I mean, people are going to harass me for saying it. I'm not saying he's a good man, but he's a brilliant man. I think he's extremely intelligent, actually. And I think part of his mask is this buffoon who accidentally tweets covfefe or whatever. I think that's really why he's able to possibly, and I would predict probably, maintain power for 8 years here, because I think he's much, much smarter than people give him credit for. But being the dumb buffoon is part of his gimmick. It's part of his thing.
Yeah, and I think that this is like, you have this guy, and he kind of maybe takes a lot of the energy away from the power that he inhabits, like the power that he presides over, the state power that he has, which is really what I would hope people would focus more on, not necessarily the man himself, the president, but the whole kind of nature of this thing that we call government. I mean, one of the things that Ron Paul always used to say is we should be asking the questions, what is the fundamental role of government in our lives? And it's not necessarily just up to one person. I mean, there's branches, there's committees, there's lobbyists, then, not to mention this whole deep state, which I'm glad got, kind of popularized recently. I mean, I was kind of aware of that before, but I'm glad it kind of came out. And, it's something that I don't think many people really totally understand how that works. It's like we spend $800 billion or whatever a year on the quote unquote defense budget, and then 80 billion for the intelligence community, and that's not even including all these like black ops budgets and all this. It's like, what do you think they're doing? This unelected power that presides just outside the Beltway. It's like, what do you think these big agencies and all this stuff and this corporate lobbying and the bank, like, what, this is a big,
they're just sitting in an office analyzing data innocently,
right? Yeah,
I don't know. I think that probably wouldn't cost like 80 billion plus whatever else.
Yeah, so my point is that there's a lot going on here, and I think that it's hard for people to kind of really go and see a lot of this stuff. But I want to get to this thing because I think it's a good idea to maybe read some of this and just kind of question the official narrative.
That was like 10
shooting.
minutes ago.
Yeah, I know. Got a little side. It's okay.
We sure do get sidetracked, but that's part of the fun.
Yeah, it's no problem. But I just think it's important to ask these questions, especially in a time like this where there's such a horrific event has happened. It's like we should really be looking at all the facts. So this guy posted this. Shout out to Matthew Rothbard. He says, I literally don't have any idea what to believe about any of this. I just know skepticism is pretty much my default position, and a lot of this seems really weird. A retired 64-year-old multimillionaire who spends his days traveling to, he's talking about Stephen Paddock, the shooter, spends his days traveling to Vegas and Dubai with his alleged shooter, and spends his time traveling to Vegas and Dubai with his thick Asian sex toy and gambling lives in a $500,000 house, is a pilot who owns 2 airplanes and hunts big game in Alaska, decides to commit a mass shooting at a Jason Aldean concert, and then commits suicide when the cops arrive. He has no military experience. He manages to exquisitely plan his attack. He books 2 connecting rooms that offer multiple firing positions overlooking the concert months in advance, while his Asian girlfriend just happens to book a trip to the Philippines at the same time. He books them in his Asian girlfriend's name so that his name as a big-time gambler won't trigger the casino's computer and give comps and draw him attention. He acquires...
I didn't know that that part. Yeah,
he acquires automatic weapons somehow and knows how to put tripods and optics on them. He moves it all up to the hotel room 3 days in advance, keeps it hidden from housekeeping, hidden from security. No security camera footage has been released. He brings a tool to smash the windows instead of shooting through them. He does enough recon on the site to realize they close all of the entrances at the concert area but one at 10, so he starts shooting at just after 10 so people have fewer exits to escape through. He even thinks of perimeter security, sets up GoPros connected to a tablet so he can watch police arrive. He thinks of everything. Then he starts shooting. At this point, despite such detailed planning, he starts to fuck everything up. He sustains fire until the drum is empty instead of firing controlled bursts, degrading the effectiveness of his fire. He only has 1 drum and then has to switch to 30-round magazines. That means more time reloading, less time shooting. His room is too high up, which increases distance to the target and makes his fire more plunging than grazing and degrading its effectiveness. He doesn't know how to use an automatic weapon. He doesn't know the first thing about it. How can someone who knows nothing about something so fundamental be able to plan the rest of the operation in such precise detail? Something isn't right. Who is this professional who planned it for him? How do they get this guy with no criminal record and a life full of wealth, sex, and adventure to do something like this? So I thought that was pretty interesting.
When you put it like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And none of that is even saying it's not true. It's just saying this seems weird.
It's exactly. Yeah. It seems strange.
And it does. I mean, if you don't think it seems weird, I don't know what planet you live on. Of course it's weird. It doesn't mean it's not true. It doesn't mean that maybe he was just a millionaire who, we all know money doesn't really buy any happiness. So maybe just because a lot of people say he's a millionaire, why do you want to kill himself? Like, I'm not going to say that. Like, plenty of rich celebrities have killed themselves. So let's not say that means anything. But, it does, when you put all the details together, it does seem odd to me. And especially the thing about, booking the adjoining rooms, and he had 2 windows that were like 9 windows apart. So was he running between the rooms shooting this whole, like, in this it's only a 5-minute, I think 40-second period of the shooting went on only. I mean, shit, that's a long time for being shot at.
I think it was 9.
I don't want to downplay anything.
I think they said it was 9 minutes, but yeah, it was.
Yeah, I may have the times wrong,
Yeah,
well, but it wasn't like hours or anything.
We're gonna have a lot of things wrong because it's so impossible. Right. It's almost impossible to know. But it's like, it's just like I don't know. I personally was like really like struck when I heard this because it's just I hate hearing about these kinds of things because I know that afterwards it's just not going to get better. I mean, there's going to be what's going to happen now, right? I mean, and the other thing is like it's Vegas, right? Like they have metal detectors and security cameras, and you can't go anywhere without being surveilled. They don't have anything on this guy. And it's just
cameras everywhere. Every casino.
Oh my God! Yeah,
because of the gambling reasons has footage everywhere. No, I found it really interesting, Mike. Like yesterday, I saw footage. They showed the suspected shooter, alleged shooter, Stephen Paddock. Here's footage of him from 2011 in a Vegas hotel falling down, and they show a picture. It's grainy security footage of him falling down. Like he obviously looks like he's drunk. He falls down, he gets back up, and like goes in his elevator. Like nothing crazy there. They're just showing that he exists, I guess. Like, I don't know what the point is, but to me, it's like, wait a minute. So they went and found and dug through footage from 2011, like 7 years ago, and found this little piece of footage, but there's not a damn thing they've released from, any footage of the last 4 days he spent at the fucking Mandalay Bay.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe it'll come out, and maybe I'll be that will answer the question. Like, I'm open to that. Like, I hope we see footage that proves the story, or I mean, I don't want it to be proven or not proven. I just want, as always, when it comes to philosophy or facts, I want to know the real truth.
Yeah.
And if asking for the real truth makes other people uncomfortable, I'm sorry. That's why we're here. That's why people like us are here. Because if we don't push you guys and push things towards one direction, it's only going to go the other direction. It's only going to go where no one questions anything. And that's not an acceptable world to live in.
Yeah, and then speaking of One Direction, the next time you might go to a One Direction,
Mike's favorite band, One Direction.
Maybe you go. Well, the next time you go to a concert, it might be pat downs. It might be like the TSA, take your shoes off.
Right.
And
I'm sure this is going to lead to some other stuff.
Yeah,
I would not be surprised at all.
That's why we want the truth, because it's like we want to find out what happened. We don't want to be living in this kind of like outdoor prison or whatever. This police state where wherever we have to be kind of worried and all this stuff all the time.
Since we've already gone down the conspiracy route a little,
yeah.
I did see one that I don't believe anyone or not, but I saw one that's interesting that adds up to me a little bit, possibly because of history and recent history, and again stuff that we know, that we factually know.
Yeah.
But I saw one that was just like a little email that's been going around a little bit. Again, theory, and I have no idea if it's true. It might be totally false. I'd like to state that clearly for the audience. But they said that this guy was an undercover FBI agent, always, like never in cover, which is why there's no history of him being involved with the government.
I saw this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that he was a part of a sting operation of selling black market weapons to ISIS agents to carry out a mass shooting, and this was a sting operation that got uncovered, or they figured it out. They killed him. They carried out the shooting and got out of there. And FBI is embarrassed and doesn't want to, they just want to say, okay, yeah, this rogue guy, we don't know who he is, but yeah, he went nuts. I don't know. He had all these guns up there and he shot a bunch of people. That's it. No more questions. But, and I'm not saying that's true. However, if you think about a couple things in history that we know, recent history, I would even say, I don't know the year. I think it was 2009. I could be wrong. This guy named Kurt Haskell, he was in a trial. It was the trial of the underwear bomber. If you remember that guy, it might have been 2007. Like I said, I don't have all these facts in front of me, but he was in the trial. He was a witness in the trial of the underwear bomber because he witnessed the underwear bomber going on the plane. And he testified under oath and has spoken about this at length for many years, that originally this guy was not allowed on the plane because he didn't have like the proper paperwork, and the agents at that airport internationally, I don't know, I think it was in England, they didn't want to put him on. And then he saw FBI agents talking to the security at that airport, and the FBI agents physically put him on the plane. They said no, he's going on the plane, and he testified in court to that. Maybe he's full of shit. I don't know why a random person who's achieved nothing from saying this other than scored on the internet would say this if it weren't true. But that's one thing. And then the first World Trade Center bombing, that was carried out by this guy, that blind Sheikh Omar. I don't know if you remember that guy. I don't remember his full name. Mm-hmm. The blind Sheikh, it was in the 90s. That bomb was given to those terrorists by an FBI agent. This is not a conspiracy theory. Again, this is one of those things you can find out if you want to look it up. It was supposed to be a fake bomb and a sting operation. It's supposed to be a sting operation. Turned out it was a real bomb, and they really set it off. So that went wrong, quote, wrong. And there's a lot of things like this. If you look into Oklahoma City, there was a lot of FBI that we know were undercover working in a lot of these Nazi groups, these neo-Nazi groups that ended up carrying out the bombing. Wherever you look, there's often FBI involvement in a lot of these things as sting operations that, quote, go wrong. So to act like that's a crazy theory is crazy. Like to act like, and these are all facts. Everything I stated before is a fact that is very look upable. So that's a word I just made up.
Nice, I like that. Yeah, no, you're right.
So that doesn't make it true, but it
yeah.
makes it possible enough to think about it a little bit.
Yes, exactly. Expand your consciousness to accept this, this realm of possibility. Because, like you said, I'm sure we can come up with so many examples throughout history. I mean, you're just guns for hostages. The Reagan thing, and what was the other one that I was thinking of? It was on the tip of my tongue.
Could and do actually a show all on conspiracies. I only do that for the bonus people of the Lions of Liberty here. But I mean, I have been obsessed with this stuff for many years.
You do a bonus show for the
yeah, we do a show called the Conspiracy Corner for our Lions of Liberty Pride members. We do it about every month, and for as little as $5 a month, you can hear all those episodes. So yeah, we do a monthly conspiracy show because I'm interested in this stuff enough to do deep digs into them, but I don't want it to be part of the Liberty, part of the podcast feed you see publicly.
Yeah.
But it's something that our paid people are really excited about. It's actually been our most popular of the bonus stuff that we do. So it's great because I'm able to do them and do this stuff that I find really interesting, but still keep it kind of segregated from the Liberty stuff.
No, that's great. Yeah, I mean, so people listening now are getting a little taste of what you're talking about, and they can go
the real thing.
They can go and listen to that. From a measured, logical, level-headed approach. And I think that I mean, just kind of what we were talking about. I mean, like these things happen, like CIA, drug running operations, and Gary Webb exposing the kind of the crack epidemic thing. There's even a movie out right now with Tom Cruise called American Made. It's all about how they picked this guy to run drugs, cocaine and stuff for the government, for the CIA and stuff. So it's like these things do happen. So yeah, I'm willing to entertain all possible theories about any of this kind of stuff, because especially when you just look at like what happened. It's so surreal. Some guy in the Mandalay Bay in the window, and he's shooting these mega guns out at this concert, and it's just such a crazy thing to see. And there are also interesting videos out there of people saying that they saw firing coming out from the lower level windows and stuff. I saw a couple of videos of that too, and other people saying there were multiple shooters. But like you said before, they're so quick to say, no, this is the official story, forget about all this stuff, we already know. And of course the guy's dead, so there's no trial, there's no prolonged investigation. It's just open and shut case, crazy guy, that's what happened. And the ISIS, I think, said they claimed it, and then they were like, no, it wasn't ISIS. Well, that was quick. How do you know? So yeah, it was a lot of very, very interesting stuff, and I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it. It's just I didn't have this plan that we were going to talk about this, but just because it happened this week, I thought it would be important to talk about. But maybe we should move on to some more positive, enlightening things. We're heading up on an hour now, but I think I want to continue a little bit more. We'll talk a little bit about some stuff that I want to talk about, and then we're going to do a little bonus section for my Patreon crowd.
Indeed.
So yeah, switching gears. It's so hard to switch gears now from like.
How do you switch gears from massive conspiracies of FBI planned mass death? I don't know. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. Yeah, very tough. But I guess
that's why we're professionals. Damn it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they pay us the
big podcast bucks.
Yeah, those big podcast dollars. But this all ties into how the laws getting changed when things like this happen, and this kind of this government rule that we live under, and these sorts of things. And obviously a big theme of my show is having the right to cognitive liberty, because I think that I'm a big cannabis enthusiast, and I dabble in the psychedelics here and there, I could say. but I think one of the benefits is that it gives you kind of like almost like a clean slate. I think that for me is one of the things that kind of maybe washes away a lot of gook, allows me to kind of see the world as this very new and novel thing. Like, wait a second, what do you mean there's just these people that make these laws? They just write things on a piece of paper, and they just
you might
tell
not
us
have thought of that if you weren't, sitting around thinking deeply a little bit.
Yeah, I just think that there's good tools to use that kind of connect you. And you brought this up before. You were talking about this human connection that we have. How would we feel if people were, attacking us in our country? What would we do? So it's like, look, we're all human. We all have this connection. And I truly do believe that, getting back to more of a I guess maybe the themes of the show for me are like, I think we need to get back to more of a community kind of living situation, decentralized, maybe some form of secession or something like that, where we can really kind of organize society that works for people in a healthy and positive way. And I believe that having kind of, spiritual practice or religious practice in your life is a part of that. And for me, I think that the psychedelics do that because they kind of connect me with this one connected humanness thing. So for that being said, what do you think about that, what I just said? And then what's your kind of experience within this realm?
And my first comment on that would be that it's really funny to me how many people would that would like hear what you just said and say, that's just that those drugs or whatever they want to call them. That's just it's tainting his mind. It's making him, he thinks he's seeing the world more clearly, but it's really just messing up his brain and whatever. How many of those same people wake up every day? The first thing they do is brew a cup of coffee so they can wake up, so they can feel a little more focused, so they can see things clearly for the rest of their day. It's not the exact same thing, but it's the same fucking thing. It's the same thing philosophically. It's the same thing. You're taking a substance that alters the way your brain is working at the moment because you want to get through your day. You want to have a little more energy. You want to have a little more focus. Same reason people take the same of those people will take tons of psychedelic, not psychedelic, but psychotropic drugs, for depression or that kind of thing, anxiety,
prescriptions,
pharmaceuticals. All of that will be 100% acceptable to them for no other reason than what you just mentioned there. Somebody wrote it down on paper that it was okay. Like, not even on paper. They typed it in whatever. They typed it in the computer and put it and called it a law. And they said, well, these lists of hundreds of drugs made in these factories, totally fine as long as a doctor scribbles something down that you can't fucking read, and then you can use it. But, oh no, if it's just something you grew out of the ground that is in no way regulated, oh no, that's messing with your brain, man. Can't use that. I mean, there's no deep thought put into this for a lot of people. There's just what they know. And look, I don't blame everybody. We all raised in this world. We're all raised in a world that confines us in many ways. So I don't necessarily blame the victim all the time. But again, Mike, that's why we're here, right? We're here to try to break some people out of their paradigms a little bit and get them thinking a little bit differently. And if you're one of these people that thinks it's terrible for anybody to use marijuana or mushrooms or anything like that, LSD, but you have coffee and you've ever taken a painkiller or anything, just think about it a little deeper. Let's put it that way. That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right, so closing thoughts from you on this episode, and then we'll move into the bonus segment. So, we talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about the ideas of liberty.
We covered a lot. I really love this interview because we went all over the place, and I think this is the one of the interviews. I mean, I'm always myself, but I usually do interviews on like purely libertarian podcasts, whereas this is kind of a mishmash, and I was able to mishmash a little bit.
Nice.
So,
yeah. Well,
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it a lot.
I'm glad that you joined me for the mishmash. So yeah, like what would you like tell people for that are listening, that are, I guess, concerned about where the state of affairs that are the goings on of what's happening now? What would be kind of like if Marc Clair was given 5 minutes of a podium time to give a message to the world, what would that be?
Oh boy, do I really need to fill 5 minutes with this answer?
Well, let's do 2. How about 2?
Okay. It's a very broad question, but that's why I like it. Because really, then that means I can give a broad answer.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is, I think, really, for me, I think the most important thing is being open-minded in all areas. Whether it's facts of a thing you just saw on the news for 10 seconds that you think is certified in stone, definitely happened, or whether it's what substances people take, or whether it's your view on politics that you've maybe grown up with your whole life or maybe come to on your own. I try to do that too. And look, there's certain things at this point I'm pretty fucking certified in. Like, you're probably not going to change my stance on guns. You're probably not going to change my stance on the war on drugs. But you know what I'll do? I'll listen. I'll listen to someone's argument if they'll speak to me rationally, if they'll sit down and have an honest conversation. And that's what we're missing a lot of nowadays, especially in the Facebook world, the tweeting world. This is a world I'm heavily involved in. And I can see how it's a double-edged sword, because in many ways it connects us. Like, you and I would probably not be having this conversation if we didn't have this connected world here with Facebook and Twitter and all this stuff. Like, I wouldn't even know about Mike Brancatelli, or that you were on a show called Part of the Problem. That probably wouldn't exist. Like, all of this stuff is amazing. And I think the good far outweighs the bad. But there is a bad. And the bad part is that our arguments, our attention spans are becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. And I think that's even more so with a generation being raised now that's growing up on iPads, growing up. I mean, I know a lot of people who just sit their kids in front of an iPad when they're bored, and then I can't say I blame them. Again, not trying to judge parents out there, but I do think this stuff is creating sort of a thing in our brains where it's hard for us to focus on anything for one amount of time, and that has to reduce every argument to a tweet or a meme or whatever. And that can really hinder conversation. So that would be the other thing I would say would be to just try to open your mind, but like try to talk to people like human beings in real life. Try to get off the internet. Try to interact. It's hard for me living out here. It's hard to interact with people, but I can get into a lot of honest conversations. Honestly, not coincidentally, I think some of my best conversations have been at the bar. Like really, that's where some people are a little more themselves. They're loosened up. They're not worried about what everyone around them saying, and you can really get into great conversations with people in the right environment. So again, this is an area where a couple drinks helps a conversation. You know, it's the same thing as you might look at a lot of psychedelics. So I'm not saying you got to go get drunk to have good conversations, but that's one way that some people have gotten into them in the past, in my past specifically. But you know, if just try to have those honest conversations in whatever venue you feel the most comfortable, and whatever venue that you can interact with people like you or people that you're able to communicate with. Just try not to come to. I'm not saying don't come to solid conclusions in life, because I think I've come to a lot of solid philosophical conclusions for me. But be open to having a non-condescending conversation about them with other people. That's very hard, I think, for libertarians especially. 2008 me was a dick. Like, I couldn't comprehend anyone that didn't get liberty like in like 2 sentences. I'm like, what's wrong with you, tyrant, statist? Like, you got to try to reel that in, and that was part of that comes with growing up and being a little bit older, and part of it just comes with just realizing that's just not what wins people over. Telling people they're assholes doesn't win them over. So try to just like with the way back at the beginning of the show, looking the terrorist shoes, if you will, understand their motivations, try to understand the motivations of the people that are talking to you. And most people are coming from a good place, in their own way, in their own mind, even if you think their ideas rightly maybe are ridiculous. Try to be open to them and understand where they're coming from with them. And that will help you have a conversation, and try to do that for yourself as well. Try to realize that, maybe where you're coming from comes a lot from your past and things that happened to you. And maybe you do need to think about the perspectives of others, when coming to these conversations and beliefs and that kind of thing. So I guess to sum it up, it really just comes down to open-mindedness, but also sort of like an inner peace in a way. Like I don't need to, and I'm a hypocrite, because sometimes I do get into Twitter wars where I start to lose my mind, and I got to pull myself back. I don't need to prove myself right to the world, but I do want to change hearts and minds. And those are often different things. So, do your best to not try to go around proving everyone wrong. And again, I'm somewhat of a hypocrite on this sometimes, because we're human. But I do try to reel myself in a bit and try to make things as much of an honest conversation as possible, especially with people in real life. It's one thing when you're having Twitter wars, because really, to me, Twitter wars are not for the people you're warring with. They're for the observers. They're for you putting out nuggets out there. So people that are happening on this conversation, thousands of people that might be just seeing this, but never liking, never commenting, because a lot of people are passive observers, and you got to keep those people in mind. When I was doing a lot of my Ron Pauling, as I call it, back in like 2008, 2012, I was posting a lot of Ron Paul videos, a lot of Ron Paul rants. A lot of times I thought, is this even changing anything? But I had a few people in those times come up to me and be like, you know what, I don't really ever say anything to you or say anything public, but I gotta say, I really love your stuff. The stuff you say, it really is thought provoking. Like, it gets me thinking about things differently, and you should definitely keep it up. So hearing even a couple people tell me that, then you realize, okay, there's people out there. They're not liking their stuff on social media. They might not even, might not know they're there, but they're there. They're there. And people are reading it, and I'm not saying you're changing everybody's minds, but you're probably planting seeds that at least get people to think a little bit. So that's the general approach I would advocate for. Excellent. I think I did take up 5 minutes after all.
No, that's great. That's excellent. I love that. And, definitely a place to go and hear, healthy debates and conversations and interesting points of view. Go to the Lions of Liberty. And, Marc is roaring 3 times a week there. And that's what we need. We need more, more people kind of expressing themselves and having conversations. So we know, how to calibrate reality. What should we believe? What should we listen to? And those sorts of things. I thought that was a great ending speech by you, Marc, and I'll definitely vote for you when you run in 2020.
Cool. Yeah, you can find all of our stuff at lionsofliberty.com. That's our main website, and of course, you can find Lions of Liberty, where where podcasts are found. You're smart enough people to know that by now. iTunes, Stitcher, yada, yada, yada. YouTube too. I only recently realized some people really like to listen to podcasts on YouTube. So we just throw up our podcast there because I guess it subverts like a lot of work places have firewalls to like iTunes, but not to YouTube. So I guess that's the reason some people listen on YouTube. So that's possible too. But yeah, and then we also have a bonus thing. If you like any of what you've heard of me and some of my conspiracy talk and some of the bonus talk here, it's really just the tip of the iceberg of the kind of stuff we do in the bonus group of the Lions Liberty Pride. That's the main show. We focus a lot on libertarian principles, current events. The bonus stuff, we don't throw that out the window, but we don't limit it to that. Let's just say we talk about all sorts of stuff. We do bonus stuff with Mike Brancatelli. We did a bonus segment with you. We do bonus segments with a lot of our guests like Tom Woods, Dave Smith. We did a lot extra stuff like that. Plus, like I mentioned on the other show, the Conspiracy Corner, we do a monthly deep dive into conspiracies. If you're into that jazz, and all sorts of just random stuff. Like a couple of the guys are starting a sports betting show. It's stuff that's like unrelated to liberty. But if you enjoy our shows and our style, you might like our takes on other subjects that aren't even necessarily related. So that's all stuff we say for the bonus people. So for as little as just like $5 a month, you can have access to all of that. And we put out a ton of content. We put out a lot of bonus content. We really put a lot of effort into providing value for that, because we want people that send us money, the people that are funding us, and we're not making money on this. We have the people that pay us all goes back into the show and goes into, eventually we're going to be doing some big advertising campaigns to get the word out there a little bit more. So this is all, we don't take a dime from it. We all are just putting 100% back into this because we really believe in the ideas we're talking about and expanding this conversation. So if you want to support us, you can find us. You can find the Pride, our paid group, at lionsofliberty.com/support. You can find more info there. And I think that about sums it up.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for being on again, Marc. And yeah, go support these guys. Go check out their stuff. Marc Clair, and you got Brian McWilliams, John Odermatt over there. Good personalities.
Electric Boy and Felony Man.
That's right. That's what I called them last time. But good personalities. It's not this like academic dry, liberty stuff. It's great. They let their personalities shine through, as you know from listening to Marc on this episode. So go check them out.
That's really part of the goal too, because we want to talk about these ideas, and many of which can be dry in theory, but we try to do it with, not contrived personality. We're really, honestly, these shows are where we be ourselves, or we attempt to. It's hard to fully be yourself when you're also thinking about hosting a show and keeping an interview flowing and that sort of thing. But we do our best. We do our best to bring sort of a non-dry flavor to things, and have interesting, compelling conversations that aren't just, let me read these 10 questions and you give me the same 10 answers you gave on every other podcast. We're really trying and making a strong effort to do a lot more than that. And based on some of the reception from the people that send us money, we must be doing something okay if they're sending their hard-earned dollars our way. So I hope you guys will at least check out the free stuff, if nothing else.
Awesome. Great. There you go, folks. There it is. Marc Clair. And all right, well, that concludes our regularly scheduled program. If you'd like to hear more from me and Marc, some more saucy, juicy, wild, crazy stories about all kinds of things, I don't want to give too much away, but let's just say there's a certain famous professional wrestler involved in one of them. Go and head over to patreon.com/MikeBrank, MikeBranc. Only on Patreon will you have access to this bonus stuff. We're going to start doing this now. I'm going to start doing more and more bonus episodes for the wonderful people that support me on Patreon. And if you want to become a Patreon supporter, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/MikeBrank, and you can be a supporter for as little as $1 a month. $1 a month. It's not that much to ask for. It's like 3 cents a day, and it helps me and this little Micadelic studio grow so we can do bigger and better things. So that's it, folks. Go on over to patreon.com if you'd like to hear more from me and Marc. We have a little bonus segment over there, about 25 minutes long or so, and we're going to start doing this regularly. We'll have some extra good bonus stuff for you guys, and some really great new episodes coming out. But thanks for listening, and see you next time.